Hey y'all, Attorney Nassau coming back at you, aka Dirty South History. Just wanted to give you a quick Black History Month nugget. I know I've been slacking on that, so I want to give you guys a couple of little nuggets to remember, to put in your toolbox, because everything that I tell you is not just history for history's sake. You know, El Hajj Malik Al Shabazz said that of all of our studies, history is the best one to reward those studies, right? We reward our research, okay? So you keep that in your toolbox. I'm not giving you these history lessons just for history lessons. I'm helping us develop our critical thinking skills because what I've seen out there, that is surely lacking in today's society. So I'm not going to give you all the answers. I'm going to lead you to the well, and you're going to be the one who drinks from it. Okay? Hopefully, if you're following me on a consistent basis, hopefully you'll develop the skills to, if you have to get into some sort of a debate with somebody, you'll have skills to protect yourself and to do what needs to be done to shut that down. All right. So these lessons are more than just history. All right. And I want to talk about the curious case of Charles Ball. Okay. Charles Ball was born a slave in Maryland. Okay. I think he was born somewhere in the 1820s or 30. Actually, I take that back. He had to be born before then. Charles Ball, like I said, was a slave in Calvert County, Maryland. And he was one that had it fairly good because his enslaver leased him out to a boat captain. And he was working on the sea, basically. And he saw a lot of interaction with a lot of different people. So he was not toiling in, from sun up to sundown in somebody's field initially. Unfortunately for him, he was sold, what they call sold down the river by this master of his or enslaver. And they sent him to Georgia. And in Georgia, he saw the real, because he was sent or sentenced, if you want to call it that, to a cotton farm. And he wrote, the reason why we know about Charles Ball is he wrote a memoir about his life. And he explained how awful and traumatic and dramatic it was to be enslaved on a cotton plantation in the Deep South. He saw all kind of inhumane things happen to human beings. Well, Charles Ball escaped. He escaped that cotton field, made his way back up to Maryland, and by that time, his enslaver either had passed or moved on, and Charles Ball essentially started living his life as a free man. He started doing different labor type tasks for his neighbors. He ended up getting paid for those things. He saved up enough money to buy some property. He ended up getting married, and he was living life pretty well for a fugitive slave. Okay, well, along comes the War of 1812, right? And if you follow me on a consistent basis, you'll know that my previous video about the colonial Marines and when America fought against Black Americans discusses that War of 1812 and Black people specifically and how they handled that, right? So go back and watch those if you haven't. But Charles Ball, being the dutiful person that he was, trying to, live his life as an American citizen, he was approached by the enslavers in that area to ask him to come with them to the British fleet to try to get their escaped slaves back. Because a lot of those people, once they heard that the British was offering freedom and land if you decided to fight with them, they left. They jetted. They ended up on the British side, right? So these enslavers looking for their property back. They asked Charles Ball to go with them so that he could talk with them to convince them to come back into slavery, come back on the damn plantation. And Charles Ball agreed to do it. So they rowed out to the British fleet, and I said rowed, R-O-W-E-D. I'm assuming that Charles Ball was the one that was doing the rowing. But in any event, they make it out to the British fleet. They end up on one of those ships trying to talk to these formerly enslaved black men who are on this ship getting ready to be trained how to be soldiers with the British, trying to convince them, lying, cheating, promising, whatever, to get these people to come back with them, come back with their enslavers, promising, making them all kind of promises how good they're going to be treated or whatever. And those guys was like, nah, bro, we good. So they were like, man, nobody's coming back. So they agreed to leave. But they asked Charles Ball to spend the night to see if he himself could convince them to stay. And that's what he did. He was making all these promises and talking about how well he has been treated and that things are not the same and this, that, the third. They were like, man, what's wrong with you? So he couldn't convince anyone. So when it was time for him to leave, as he was about to disembark from the ship, the one of the British officers, before he left, asked him, hey man, do you want to stay with us? We're going to give you your own land somewhere in one of our colonies, and definitely you'll be free. And Charles Ball looked at that man, looked him up and down most likely, and was like, sir, I'm already free. Okay. So Charles Ball, being this great American citizen, gets back on his rowboat and goes back to the mainland. He ends up joining the military, joining the United States Navy, actually, and he becomes a soldier. And he actually fights in what's known as the Battle of Bladensburg. Go back and watch my video on the Colonial Marines. You'll see how that went. Well, Mr. Ball, it's funny because nobody talks about this, but this was apparently an integrated unit. And Mr. Ball performed honorably. He fought hard, but they lost. They got their ass kicked. And they got their ass kicked by these other black, formerly enslaved people who were known as the Colonial Marines, but these people were fighting on the side of the British because the British promised them freedom and land, which everybody in America wants, right? So Ball, being a smart man, instead of running away with the other quote unquote soldiers and militiamen, he walks right through that line and goes back to his property, right? And he just goes about trying to live his life as he used to prior to this war happening. Well, fast forward a couple of years, Mr. Ball, being a fugitive slave, never actually being manumitted or getting his papers from a so-called masters showing that he's a free man, he goes into town and he is spotted by a slave trader. And this slave trader's like, you look familiar. I think I sold your ass down to Georgia about 20 years ago. And they seized him then and there. And they re-enslaved that man. And they sent him back down to Georgia. And he escaped again. But this time it was after some years, right? And when he finally makes it back up to Maryland, he realizes that his wife and the kids had been sold into slavery. His property was lost. His family was gone. And in his memoir, the last of the writing that we are aware of, he never saw his lovely wife and kids again. So there's a lesson in that, okay? You can't fall for everything. You can't believe all these promises that some of these folks will make to you. All right? So that is the story of Charles Ball. And feel free to do some research and look him up. He's quite an interesting figure. But he thought he was more American than the white supremacists who were gassing him up to think that he was an American. All right. Thank you.